Hey kids, and welcome to the second session on day 2. We're going to be listening to a story recitation about a book on Srinivasa Ramanujan, the boy who loved his numbers. So we have Janaki Sabesh, who is a master storyteller. She has been across literature festivals and she's been doing this over 20 years. So to bring this story to life, I'm very, very happy to bring Janaki Sabesh to you. She's going to be telling you the story. And after that, we're going to meet the lady who wrote this wonderful book on Srinivasa Ramanujan. Her name is Priya Narayanan, and we're going to be chatting with her and ask her how did she do her research about such a great mathematician, and how did she convert it so simply into a beautiful book that all of you can read. So we're going to start with the storytelling and then analyze the book and talk to the author of the book. Right? So let's jump right in.
Thank you, Pallavi, for introducing me and inviting me to be a part of the Children's Literature, Art and Music Festival. I'm so excited to be a part of this amazing event. I'm sure each one of the workshops, each one of the storytelling sessions, each one of the conversations that you're going to have on this festival is going to resonate with all your children audience, and I'm sure there will be some takeaways from each of the session for all of them. So let's get straight into the story. So long ago in 1887, on December 22nd, in the banks of the river Kaveri in Erode, a son was born to Srinivasa and Komalam. And as tradition would have it, on the 11th day, this boy was named Srinivasa Iyengar Ramanujan. Now, Srinivasa Iyengar Ramanujan was also fondly called by his mother as Chinnaswamy. Chinnaswamy, Chinnaswamy, come here. Chinnaswamy, don't do that. Chinnaswamy. And Chinnaswamy was as naughty like any other child. In his age, when he didn't get what he wanted, he threw tantrums, he rolled on the mud. But you know what? In the kitchen, he used to love playing with those utensils, and he used to keep it in a straight line. That straight line would be absolutely straight. Now this child was lost in thought, always. He used to look up, he used to suddenly see patterns emerging. In the night sky, he used to look, and he used to look at those stars, and maybe there was a pattern. He started seeing patterns in everything. In fact, he started falling in love with numbers, and there were lots and lots of questions. The family moved to another place called Kumbakonam, and there again he was flooded with thoughts. How far are the stars? How far are the clouds? How long is the equator? These were the questions which kept on bothering him, asking him. He always wanted to ask, he always wanted to find out more. There was some curiosity in him that just kept him going. He started going to school. Now, before going to school, he had to be given a bath, and his mother used to give him a bath. Now, in those days, in Brahmins, they used to have long hair. So this child also had long hair, and he was wearing dhoti. Now, as his mother oiled his hair and gave him a nice hair bath, as the water kept flowing, he started seeing patterns, those circles, those ripples. He started seeing that they became bigger and bigger and bigger. His mother then tied his hair into a nice knot, combed his hair, and then took him as they walked to the school. From the nearby temple, he could hear those chants. Om Nama Somaya, Somaya Namo Nama Somaya Cha Somaya. He kept looking at this beautiful gopurams as they are called, the beautiful towering temple. And in that temple, gopuram, he used to find beautiful gods and goddesses carved, very, very beautiful, exquisite carvings. But he used to start seeing patterns. He used to start seeing circles. He used to start seeing lines, and all kinds of thoughts emerged. What are these patterns looking like? How are they? In the school, when other children used to just play, he used to sit down with a slate and a chalk and kept writing something or the other. And as he started writing those, the numbers started making the dance in front of him. 2, 3, 4, 5. In fact, when his mother used to put columns, rangoli, outside his home, he used to see a lot of patterns emerging. He used to see numbers emerging. He used to look at the kite in the sky, and he saw patterns emerging there also. He looked at patterns everywhere. In school, when he was sitting with his slate and chalk, and he was sitting under a tree, all the other children were playing, they sneaked, some of his friends, they sneaked and they put a lot of pebbles in his dhoti. Ramanujan was completely unaware, and when he got up, all the pebbles fell. All the children laughed, but it didn't bother Ramanujan at all. He kept working on the numbers again and again. When Ramanujan was very young, he loved listening to his mother share stories from the Ramayana, Mahabharata, Puranas, and of course of his goddess Namagiri. He also loved playing a game with his mother which was called Aada Puli Aatam. Aada meaning goat and Puli meaning tiger. So this was an asymmetrical game, a very, very clever game where there were 3 tigers. One player got 3 tigers and the other player got 15 lambs or goats. And the whole thing was the tiger would want to capture the goats, and the goats would try and protect themselves from the tiger. One day in class, the teacher was teaching a lesson, and he said, if you divide any number by itself, the answer will be 1. Let me give you an example. If you have 3 friends and you divide 3 fruits, each one will get 1. But Ramanujan suddenly got up and he said, what if there are no friends and no fruits? How will anybody get 1? The teacher was shocked. This was no ordinary question, and he kept thinking, what kind of a boy is this Ramanujan? In fact, Ramanujan could solve problems 2 classes above him. During exam time, he would finish the answers in half the allotted time. And sometimes when the teacher used to take 10 steps to solve a problem, Ramanujan would complete it in just 4 steps. Such was the power of Ramanujan's mind, which constantly kept looking at patterns, dreaming of patterns. When he was about 15 years old, somebody gifted him a nice fat book of mathematical problems. And what did Ramanujan do? He was thrilled to bits and he started solving those problems. He kept solving those problems, and in fact his father would scream at him, how come you are spending so much time in just doing maths? What good will come out of it? You know what he did, children? Ramanujan, there was a very small house, just had one bed. Ramanujan would go under the bed and start solving those problems. Everybody would search for Ramanujan, but Ramanujan would be under the bed solving those problems. He just wouldn't let go of those problems, because numbers were now his best friends. Odd numbers, even numbers, prime numbers, composite numbers, fraction. He was in a world of numbers, so much so that when he came to college, he failed in every other exam except mathematics. His parents were very, very upset that he did not score enough. But The problem with Ramanujan was that he didn't like any other subjects. Whenever he saw history or chemistry or any other subjects, he could only see the numbers. He could see numbers coming out of history, coming out of other books. He was just not interested in any other subject but just maths and maths alone. His parents were very, very worried for him. Who will give him a job? He had failed in all other subjects and he had just done so well in mathematics. But Ramanujan was not worried. He got married and he actually got a job in the Madras Port Trust as a clerk. Now there again, he was not given papers. You know, he wanted to keep writing. So he used to write it on a slate and just the fair copy he used to start putting in papers. What kind of papers? Papers that were discarded. He used to get all those papers, packing material, whatever he laid hands on, he would take that and start, making his theorems, keep noting down the numbers that kept coming. Sometimes he would take a red ink pen and write on already written, sheets which were written on blue ink. He would write with red ink. Such was his love for numbers. Now, as he started getting numbers, some of his colleagues and people working with him found that they were really, fellow mathematicians. They found that these were amazing, theories and something really amazing that he had brought out, and they decided to get it published. And they all said that these were really good. But Ramanujan wanted to do better. For him, good was not enough. He wanted to do better and better and better. He wanted the whole world to know. And you know what he did? Remember, those were the times of the British rule in India. What did he do? He wrote to 3 professors in England, Cambridge. Now, he wanted to go and work with them, and he wanted to really, really get his work published in a larger arena. And 2 of them, they said no, because he was after all a clerk in a colony of British, somewhere in Madras, as it was called then. But there was one professor from Cambridge, Professor Godfrey Hardy. He was very, very impressed with the letters that Ramanujan had sent him, because he found something very, very intriguing, and he found a lot of promise in those letters. And he wrote back to Ramanujan asking him to come to Cambridge and that he would love to work with him, alongside with him. When Ramanujan got the letter from Godfrey Hardy, he was thrilled. He was thrilled to bits. He was being invited to go to Cambridge. This is what he wanted all his life. He wanted to go and publish the papers there. But a lot of other thoughts clouded his mind. In those days, Brahmins were forbidden to go overseas. He started getting doubts. Will my goddess Namagiri, to whom I pray every day, will she disown me? Will my families and friends disown me? Will they accept me back? What will happen to me? And that's when he remembered what his mother used to always say. Follow your heart, Ramanujan. Follow your heart, because that will make you do what you really want. And that's what he did. But then he had to go through a lot of changes. He had to first cut his hair, which he did. And then he was so used to wearing dhoti, he had to now wear shirts and pants, which he did. And he was told that he had to learn how to eat with a fork and a knife. He was all along used to only eating by hand. And then he bid adieu to his family and sailed to England. And there he was welcomed by Mr. Hardy and all the others in Cambridge. Of course, not all understood who this person was. They all knew he was just a clerk from a colony of British called Madras. They were wondering what was he doing here. But Ramanujan started showing so much promise. In fact, Professor Hardy gave him so much of paper and pen, which he was thrilled to bits. He said, "Are these paper all mine?" And he started writing those numbers, those theorems. He started imagining. He started getting all kinds of patterns in his mind, and he started writing it down. And Professor Hardy was thrilled. He started seeing so many patterns and so many numbers and so many equations and theorems that he was so proud of Ramanujan. They kept going, they kept writing, rewriting, and soon enough Ramanujan's papers were getting published. In fact, all of them asked, "Who is this bright young boy from India?" And Professor Hardy was so proud of Ramanujan. In the meantime, World War I had broken out, and everyone, most of them, left Cambridge, either to join the war services or to go to safer areas. Many, because of lot of air raids, lot of people were forced to remain indoors. Now Ramanujan was used to having these conversations with friends in Cambridge and talk about whatever he discovered, and somehow he even managed vegetarian food. But now he was confined to his room. There was a lot of gloom around, and he also felt very, very gloomy. But what could he do? He couldn't go out. So who were his friends? Numbers. And what did he see in numbers? Patterns. One day when he was making rasam, the kind of soup that we have in South India, as he was preparing to make rasam, some of the lentils fell. He started counting the lentils. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 lentils. And then he started making combinations that would add up to 7. He started rearranging, arranging, rearranging, and then he found that there were 15 combinations that would add up to 7. He was so excited. He started doing it with 8, 9, 10, 11, and before long, there were lentils everywhere. There were lentils on the bed, there were lentils on the table, there were lentils on the chair. And he had found 627 combinations that would add up to number 20. He was so thrilled that whole night he couldn't sleep because he kept on thinking about these combinations, permutations, and he was so excited he wanted to share it with Professor Hardy. And that's exactly what he did. Next day he rushed to Professor Hardy and he showed it to him, and he said, "Look, there are so many combinations that we can get of the smaller numbers that would add up to the larger number." Professor Hardy was thrilled, and they both got down to working very, very hard on completely different set of numbers. They worked on partition of numbers. And one day when Professor Hardy came to meet Ramanujan, he said, "I came in a very boring number taxi." It was 1729. The moment he said that, Ramanujan said, "It's not a boring number, it's a very interesting number." He said, "How? How do you say that?" 1729 is the smallest number which can be expressed as the sum of two cubes in two different ways. 10 into 10 into 10 plus 9 into 9 into 9, or 12 into 12 into 12 plus 1 into 1 into 1. Professor Hardy was amazed. In fact, later on, this was called the Hardy-Ramanujan number. But because of the lack of vegetarian food and the cold, Ramanujan fell sick and he had to be hospitalized. In the hospital also, he kept looking at patterns and numbers. In fact, it became so cold that he used to go into the warm bathroom of the hospital and still work there. Because for him, it was all about patterns. For him, it was all about numbers. But then Ramanujan health started failing and he wanted to go back home. He wanted to go back home to the comfort of his family and friends. In 1980, Ramanujan was elected to the Royal Society of London. Ramanujan came back to India to the comfort of his family and friends. And on April 26, 1920, he breathed his last. He was only 32, but he left behind so much of work, the volume of work which helped scientists understand so many things. How did the universe begin? How do black holes behave? How can internet and computers work better? How can cancer treatment be improved? And so much more. In fact, in 1914, Ramanujan had calculated the length of the equator as 40,078 kilometers. And today, with all the calculators and computers, we have found that the length of the equator is 40,075 kilometers. Such was the genius of Srinivasa Iyengar Ramanujan. Now, December 22nd is celebrated as National Mathematics Day, because that is the way we can remember this genius. Numbers, 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 patterns, 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 numbers in patterns, patterns in numbers, these were the things that he could see. Numbers, 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 patterns, 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 numbers in patterns, patterns in numbers, these were the things that he could see. Circles and ripples, patterns and kites, circles and ripples, patterns and kites, numbers in columns, magic in numbers, these were the things only he could see. These were the things only he could see. These were the things only he could see. So this is the book from which I just shared the story of Srinivasa Ramanujan. The book is titled Srinivasa Ramanujan, Friend of Numbers. It's written by Priya Narayanan and illustrated by Satvik Ghade. Also published by Tulika Publishers. Thank you, Priya Narayanan, for writing this beautiful story and introducing all of us to the world of Srinivasa Ramanujan. I hope you all enjoyed the story. Thank you so much.
So kids, you just heard the amazing story of Srinivasa Ramanujan, the friend of numbers. Thank you, Janaki, for bringing that story to life. And kids, we have an amazing session in continuation. You get to meet the author of the story. Welcome, Priya. A very warm welcome onto the Get Set Parent Children's Literature, Art and Music Festival.
Thank you so much, Pallavi. Hi, kids. I hope you're all going to stay and listen to the little journey of how the Ramanujan book got written.
Yeah, that's super exciting. I'm going to quickly introduce Priya to all of you because we know she's written this story, but let's listen to a little bit about her. She is an author, a poet, a traveler, designer, and a mother. And she loves to travel and conjure up stories. So we've heard one of her stories. And she does this over coffee and chocolate chip ice cream. That is so much fun. That's the fun bit, Priya. So she started writing for kids in 2013 with the book called The Moon Wants to Be Spotless. And very recently, she won the Neve Awards for Children's Literature for the Emerging Readers category. Priya, that is such a wonderful journey of writing that you've had. But you want to tell us a little more about how you got into writing and how did you pick Srinivasa Ramanujan to write about?
Okay. I think I've been writing ever since I was in high school. Not younger than that. Yeah, since high school I've been writing, but mostly I started off with writing poetry. So I used to write short poems I used to visit the British Council Library in Chennai a lot, and I used to read a lot of poetry, and I used to try and write poetry too. And that's how the journey of writing started, and slowly kind of it evolved into short stories and a little more complex stories, complex
Mm.
poems, different
Mm.
forms of poems. So I love to explore, variety. I don't like
Okay.
to get stuck in one kind of writing.
Genre.
So
Yeah.
I have explored different types of writing. So right now I'm exploring haiku and tanka. So
Ah.
the journey of exploration is on all the time. So it kind of evolved that way. And of course, I had my writing for children started only after I had my first child. And I found that innocence back in my life, which I guess somewhere along the road it had
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
diluted. So the kind of questions children ask, and and then you don't want to give them real answers. You want to then give them answers which it will kind of make them wonder and make them really fascinated about things around them, look at things around them very differently. And that's how I started writing for children.
Lovely. And how did you pick? Was it also a parallel love for math that made you pick Srinivasa Ramanujan?
uh, Not, I wouldn't call it love for math. I always liked maths, but not in a way a mathematician would love math.
Yeah.
I liked math for different reasons. Um, I I actually didn't consciously pick up Ramanujam initially. Actually, the journey I'll start. It's a slightly long story.
Sure. Sure.
I'd gone to Spain in 2015, and there I picked up this book about this picture book about Antonio Gaudi, who's an architect. He's a self-made architect. He really had formal architectural education, but he was a self-made architect, and that book really floored me. The kind of illustrations and the way, in very simple words, it traced his entire life journey. So when I came back, I was in search for some Indian whom I could write about. I was
Hmm.
like, who qualifies to be written about in such a wonderful manner, which will also inspire children. And then much later, I read Robert Kennigal's A Man Who Knew Infinity, and I knew right then that this is the book I want to write for children.
Yeah.
And until then, there was no picture book about Srinivasa Ramanujan at all, and it gave me that opportunity to be the first one to introduce him to really little children, and
No, that's
not
wonderful.
in a manner where so yeah, that's how I picked up. I didn't really pick him up
He
as
came to
somebody
you.
that I wanted to
He
write.
arrived upon the scene.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
in fact,
yes,
there
yes,
was a beautiful movie made as well on the man who loved numbers on Srinivasa Ramanujan. It was a
yes,
Hollywood film, and it was beautifully done. And
yes,
I'm so glad some of these forgotten heroes from academics and accomplishments across are being brought back to life by writers like you. Because
yes.
having
Actually,
passed away in
that's something I
1920.
also felt.
Yeah, no, having passed away in 1920, the story needs to be retold for the new generations in a style which is very, very relevant to them. And you've done that wonderfully.
Yeah, thank you.
So,
I always kind of
yeah,
felt that a lot has been written in Indian literature for kids about gods and goddesses, but nothing
yeah,
about fellow contemporary Indians, fellow Indians who have achieved. Very few such icons have been actually written about for children. And of
right.
course, Gandhiji being what he is, there's a lot that's been written about him for every age group, right? From a little child to teenagers to adults. But
Yeah.
very few other Indians have really found their way into children's literature.
Right, right. No, you're right. Indian mythology, in fact, I see a second wave coming in. There's
True.
with wonderful new writers presenting Indian mythology in a very, very new context. That is definitely exciting. But on the other hand, having
Absolutely.
real life
Yeah.
aspirational heroes and also celebrating academics, celebrating art and music, and bringing our Indian heroes to life is definitely something that one could get a lot more of. So are you planning a series of Indian academicians, or what's in line for your early readers next?
No, no, no. No, so it's not. I'm not going to do a repeat of this at least for the time being. I do
Okay.
have a couple of more ideas, but they need to kind of incubate, and they need time to mature. But yeah, the next book I have written, and I think unfortunately due to COVID, it didn't get
Yeah.
published this year. Hopefully next year it'll see the day of light. But that's again somehow related to mythology. But yeah, it's an interesting. It's a very different book connected to mythology. So let's see what happens with that.
All
I hope
right.
kids love it.
So what are some of the books that you recommend for children these days? You know, you have little kids at home as well. So we have a lot of parents who are our audience here. So what are some of the amazing Indian books or internationally that you would recommend to our early readers on the platform? And also some tips for parents on how to maybe encourage their children to read more?
Okay. I think there's no specific book that I would like to recommend, because every book should be read, and every child finds uh, something for himself or herself in every book, something which very different from the other child. So, for
Hmm.
example, I've seen in my own children,
Yeah.
so I have a boy and a girl, and their choices of books, what they like to read, are quite different. Not because they're boy and girl, but because they're
Yeah.
different individuals, and their likings are, quite different. And so I think any child, even my Ramanujan book, for instance, some kids would love it, and some kids would like blah blah blah, and they'll just put it away, and I'm quite okay with that, because I
Yeah.
don't think every book is meant for every child. So they should definitely explore it. They should take it, flip through it, and see if it reaches out to them, talks to them. Then they should read it, and they should be really happy about it. But if they don't, I am totally fine with them putting it away and picking up something else.
Okay.
So which brings me to the idea, what you asked about parents. Again, I think nowadays parents are very concerned about children not reading, but and in that process, they kind of try to push children to reading and force them into reading. I think that should not really happen. If a
Hmm.
child naturally, gravitates in, and they should, of course, encourage. If the child is not really into it, I don't think they need to panic. What they need to do is, I tell this to everybody. My trick is, leave lots of books in lots of rooms, in all the rooms in your house, including your
Yeah.
kitchen.
Yeah.
You leave, a couple of books here and there all the time. And when they get bored of doing everything else that they do, including, their social media or WhatsApp or YouTube or whatever they want to do, they'll get bored of it at some point of time. And they sit there, they find a book, they flip it open. That book might just talk to them. And I
Yeah.
think that's the best way for, instead of really forcing them, say, paro. I think the book should really,
Yeah, I think
come to
that's,
them organically.
in fact, even another writer we were interacting with said, exposure is very important. Leave a variety of books, and also allow them to dabble with not just fiction but also non-fiction books or encyclopedias or picture
Absolutely.
dictionaries. Or, I mean, I keep telling parents, for kids who don't read, even let them even read the recipes at the back of a box in the kitchen. That's also reading. Start
Yeah,
anywhere.
yeah,
Anything is reading.
yeah,
And comics, explore the world of comics.
absolutely.
And so I think, gradually developing the love for reading instead of making it an academic exercise is what would work well for children.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Lovely. So, Priya, it was great interacting with you, and we look forward to your next books as well. And kids, you know what to do. Pick up this beautiful book which, we've been reading at home at bedtime, which is the story that you just heard. And I love it. I love the illustrations. It's so beautiful. It's a perfect bedtime read. So thanks a lot, Priya, for joining us at the Literature Festival, and look forward to you and your kids being a part of the 8-day festival as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Pallavi, for having me. It was a pleasure talking to all of you. Bye, kids.
Lovely. So, dear parents and
Okay.
kids, you know what to do. Tomorrow, we are going to meet for 2 amazing sessions. We're going to do Worli art with Salome Parekh. She is going to really simplify the world of Worli art, and it's a demonstrative workshop. So get your paper, get your, different colored sketch pens, and, 1 or 2 rulers, erasers, pencils, all your art paraphernalia out. And we're going to be doing activity-based storytelling by Mr. Prateek Dhruva, who's the head of Amar Chitrakatha Learn. So that's going to be super fun as well. So look forward to, all of you joining us tomorrow. And Priya, look forward to you joining us tomorrow for these amazing sessions as well.
Absolutely. Count me in. I'm so excited for the kids.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.